Good evening, everyone. Today we're in for a different type of treat. Today we're going to be looking at Into the Tower. This is by Harry Connor, and it is a Choose Your Own Path book, otherwise known as a Choose Your Own Adventure, not unlike the Lone Wolf books, and there are some others they don't come to mind, or other types of interactive fiction which you may find on the internet. There are many genres. It's been a popular genre since at least the 80s, early 80s, I'd say. Now, this Into the Tower, I'll be taking a look at today. Fairly simple. This has a quick start. You pick a class, character classes. There are 4 characters with different skills and different paths they can go through. Stamina reaches 0, well, the journey's over. And whenever you gain an item or a status, you simply write it down on your sheet. Your skills are also fairly straightforward. Strength, your ability to lift, force things. Agility, your ability to dodge and slip through a crowd. Charisma, well, your ability to persuade, charm, lie, act. Logic, your ability to solve puzzles, calculate risks, and so forth. And your stamina is essentially, well, it's really your health pool, right? Now, they give us ways to cheat at the book, play in easy story mode if you wish, where you can kind of go back in time and whatnot, but you can also play hard mode, which is, well, we're not going to get into the details of that because we're going to be playing normal mode, I suppose you can say. So, the 4 classes are as follows. We have the Thief. We have the Sailor. We'll take a better look at these after too. The Libertine and the Acolyte. Spoiler alert, I'll most likely be playing the Acolyte. I've had that in my mind for a while now, so not because it's the hardest, although it does seem to be the most challenging, but just aesthetically, this was the first character that I wanted to play. As well as this, in the back of the book, amongst other things, they also have achievements, which I think are interesting. I'm not going to pay too much attention to that in this playthrough, but it should be worth noting that there are some in the book. So I will take note if I happen to achieve something. Now, before we go on, because I will not be playing the physical copy, unfortunately, as much as I want to, it's logistically a bit difficult, so we will be playing on a PDF version. But just to show you, I did have printouts of the character sheets. We have the 4 characters. Character sheets are quite straightforward. You just have your stats, a box for inventory, box for your status, box for notes. I'll reenact that in a notepad. And there's a create your own character section and another achievement section, so I can actually take note. In fact, I'll probably have that be the normal page. So here we go. We have the achievements section here on paper, so I can check things off. Anyways, let's go into the book. Into the Tower is an illustrated fantasy adventure that unfolds as you choose the story, with intertwining plots and multiple special endings for each of the 4 playable characters. Choose to sneak, charm, or fight your way to reach the magical objects at the top of the tower in a daring fantasy heist. Discover the tower's secret history, see strange creatures and other worlds, traverse the source of all magic, and escape with your prize, if you can make it out alive. Right, let's get started. Right, and here we are, Into the Tower, a Choose Your Own Path book. I've tried my best to faithfully recreate the feeling of what it would be like to play with the book and pencil and paper. Of course, I have the PDF here. We have the bookmarks, so when it tells me to go to a certain page, well, you know how difficult it can be to navigate PDFs. Luckily, we have the bookmarks here. I'm trying not to read them, nor the achievements, because I feel like there's some spoilers. And of course, we have the character sheet here, everything we need, all the info we need, minus, the nice picture on the side. And of course, for ambiance, we have a fire, of course, candles if you prefer, but I think we'll stick with the fire for now. Now, I do find it somewhat comical because I've owned this book for nearly 2 years now, and I've always assumed that I would play for the first time in my physical copy, which is why I had everything printed. Well, as you can see, that's not the case. I was inspired to play it, and I figured, well, why not try and make a neat little video? I rather love interactive fiction, and I'm actually working on a couple of works of my own, and I would love to share them. So I thought, well, why not? Why not just play this one? There's potential for many playthroughs. So by all means, this could be done multiple times, or if I do once, it won't necessarily spoil most of the book for you anyway. So it's not the biggest of deals, but. Anyways, let's get started. So, Into the Tower by Harry Connor. I've already gone over in the previous video, the basics. It's quite simple. You have stats. They make you better at certain things. If your stamina's 0, the adventure's over, right? It's quite straightforward there. Now, the character sheets, just in case we want to take a better look, actually I believe we will have to get to that, so why don't I skip all the way down to the bottom for those of you who are maybe a bit aggravated of not being able to get a chance to look at the achievements. Here they are. So I'm trying not to look at them myself, for fear of, potential spoilers, but if you're interested, pause the video, take a quick look. Alright, back up to the top of the page, top of the book rather. Okay. Without further ado, let us get started. Alright, so, I believe this is how it would start for me. Yes, page 4, it begins. The gates of the locked keep open only once every 10 years. Tonight, on the night of the masquerade ball, it's your one and only chance to get inside and get what you need. High above the city in the shadow of the mountains is a castle, with thick and seemingly impenetrable walls enclosing its outer and inner courtyards. The doors through which the castle staff are allowed entry are heavily defended by armed guards and surveilled by masked royal inquisitors, ruthless agents of the crown rumored to have been given strange powers. In the innermost courtyard, rising high into the sky out of the locked keep, is the tower of the Spellbinder Princess. It's said that even those who somehow make it inside find the tower guarded by generations of royal spellbinders' magical traps, dangers, and barriers. There are many tales of those who tried to make their way in, and none of any who made it out. There, at the top of the tower, is the famed Requisition Room, a huge store of supposedly dangerous objects confiscated by the Royal Inquisitors. The people in the town below whisper of the Inquisitors' growing boldness. Once, they took only the most powerful magical artifacts to prevent dangerous uses. But since the mysterious princess stopped appearing in public over a decade ago, they've become more and more stringent. Almost nothing is known for sure about the princess, but many say the enchanted objects are taken to give her an endless supply to probe, analyze, and take apart to use in her own enchantments. All you know is that the room holds magical trinkets and scholars' experiments gone awry, dangerous documents, secrets, and ancient treasures, and among all of them, something you desperately want. You'll do anything to get it, and tonight is your one opportunity. Only the exclusive guests of the ball and the hired servants helping prepare will be allowed entry by the guards at all, and only for tonight. But for once, the main gates of the castle will be open wide, its courtyards full of strangers and noise, bustle, and confusion. The journey may be arduous, strange, and full of perils, but if there's any chance at all to get into the tower, this is it, and you mean to seize it. Alright, well, that's a mouthful. I'm gonna have to be sure to have my water in great supply, that's for sure. Turn to page 6. Well, that should be... the pages aren't really numbered like in the book, so that's why I think it's really important to use this. So we'll choose a character sheet. Fair enough. As I mentioned, I've already chosen, but at least this way, you, the viewer, can get a better look at them. So let's take a moment. This here is the thief, who revels in the idea of pulling off the most daring heist imaginable and getting revenge on the richest in the city, through any means necessary. His best skills are agility and stamina. His playstyle, he is the best prepared character, will find it easiest to get inside the castle and fastest to reach the tower's mysteries. For a quick start, it doesn't really tell us on the scale here. It's failed to convert properly for the thief, but I can tell you that the thief is about here for survivable, and quick play right about here. Next, we have the sailor. The sailor is looking for purpose and answers, trying to recover a lost heirloom and information on a missing family member who left strange magic and an inquisitor cover-up in their wake. Their best skills are strength and stamina. The strongest and most direct character and the best in a fight. You play this one for story and mystery. Now, for survivability, a little bit closer to the challenging, right about here. As for story, much more story-oriented than the thief. Moving on, we have the libertine. The libertine is a disgraced, dramatic courtier in love with the wrong person and unwittingly caught up in something bigger. Their best skills are charisma. Their playstyle, they are the most used to navigating high society, if not in physical danger. You play for drama, intrigue, romance. As far as the difficulty sliders, quite challenging right about here, but they offer the most story all the way at the end here. Now, the Acolyte, which is the one I was first compelled to play, and I will stick to my guns regarding that. The Acolyte was chosen first for the Great Library and now for a looming wider purpose. Compelled toward catastrophe by a terrible magic, the Acolyte can change the course of destiny. Their best skills are logic. Their playstyle, they are the most knowledgeable character and can discover the most about the tower and its history, so this could be quite interesting. You play for the lore and a challenge, so this may actually not be... The characters are getting increasingly more difficult, so perhaps this is not the best idea, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. As for challenging, they're all the way at the end here. Story, they get about somewhere in between the thief and the sailor, around here. Around here. So it does say, if I wish to play the Acolyte, I turn to page 19. Which is interesting. We all have different starting points. Now, it must be said, this is a choose-your-own-adventure book. And I've never played before. I'm going in completely blind, so it's difficult to say how long this will take. This could be many, many hours, or I may have to do multiple parts, or my journey could end in 30 minutes. I suppose we'll see. That's the excitement of it all. I think that's the real excitement of interactive fiction. So let's, again, without further ado, let us jump in. Page 19, The Acolyte of the Great Library. Oh, yes, actually. Before I can actually start, I need to input my statistics, don't I? Let me just access the page here. You'll have to take my word for it. But the Acolyte has 2 strength, 1 agility, 3 charisma, and as it's been mentioned before, logic at 6 being the best. Stamina, that is at a 4. Inventory, status, and notes, well, this you'll all see at the very same time as I, so you'll just have to take my word that those are the proper numbers. Very good. Page 19. The Acolyte of the Great Library. You were chosen. The archivists came to your village and watched the children for a week, swathed in their robes of office and silence. On the final day, it was you they chose to become an apprentice. Your father let you go reverently, honored to have a child who would rise to so lofty a position, but something in your mother's expression seemed afraid. She nodded quietly and raised no objections to the archivists. How could she? But as they took you away, you could see that she was weeping. The caravan trundled along the uneven road up into the mountains, and in the light of the rising sun you caught your first glimpse of the glinting domes of the great library. Over the years you would come to know the library like your own hands and breath, like an unconscious extension of yourself. Back then, you could almost sense it already. At first you kept the quiet corridors, where all the apprentices slept, learning the library's architecture in an abstract as you memorized the catalogue in plain, austere classrooms. But as you began to learn your duties, the whole library slowly unfolded itself unto you. Piece by piece, its curving galleries, the high and winding stacks, the neat numbers inked on the shelves, and enchanted ladders that stretched impossibly upward into the library's higher reaches. You were a quick study, and through your careful diligence you rose swiftly through the ranks. Responsibilities were bestowed upon you, precious texts allowed into your care when you were not yet fully grown. Some of the other apprentices were sluggish and reluctant, robbed of their grand aspirations and former lives, chained to their new roles in the library. But you were like a fish that slipped into a river and found that they loved the current. You had been wishing for the water all your life. Your fingers came to know the delicate papyrus of the ancient scrolls, the silk of the 1,000-year-old mathematical manuscripts, the clack of bamboo slips, the weight of vellum, and the thick texture of paper in the bound volumes that stretch in great sweeps under the library's vaults and spires. Your feet tapped lightly in the warm corridors as if moving in a perfect dance, fetching and returning with beautiful efficiency. You went eagerly and finished early, leaving you long afternoons to leaf through penned folk tales, historical accounts, military reports, arcane instructions, agricultural advice, anything and everything you could find. And so you came to know the books too over the solitary and blissful years. You became able to advise and summarize to the clerks, scholars, alchemists, and enchanters who came to the great library, and it only propelled you higher. Distinguished researchers would sometimes come asking after controlled texts, knowledge only entrusted to a careful few and available to only the most faithful and dedicated of archivists. And eventually, you were granted access. It was a thrill to be allowed behind the closed, hallowed door to walk among the restricted texts. The whole of the great library was open to you now, its oldest and most dangerous controversies and mysteries unshrouded and quietly waiting. So now, when you finished your daily tasks, you slipped into the quieter, plainer depths of the library, drifting away from the airy expanses of the upper floors and behind its locked doors. You read terrible accounts of violence that would destabilize the peace of the whole continent if they were widely known. Ramblings by spellbinders playing with forces far beyond their reckoning, whose minds had unraveled in the process, and one day, eagerly leafing through though yet another shelf, you found the book about the key. The material of the binding looked modern, but the pages were ragged, torn, and unreadable in places, as if it were very old. The cover was scuffed and pitted as if the carrier had been thrown some kind of struggle. Rather, as if the carrier had been through some kind of struggle, and proclaimed no title or author. You frowned as you opened it. It was a book that would have been sent for repair or rebinding long ago if it had been in the main collection. The writing seemed fragmented, truncated in places, and almost incomprehensible. You might well have given up on skimming the book and moved on if it were not for the stumbling over a strange mention of something the book only ever described as the key. The writer had penned the letters of the words in violent, slanted hand wherever they appeared, and as you flicked, you found they appeared again and again. The pen had seemed to press harder into the page for this phrase than for the surrounding words, and the author spoke of it every time with a strange fervor, sometimes terrified, sometimes longing, often erratic, but always passionate. They never described the appearance of the thing, only that in one mention it seemed to be small enough to hold in one hand, and in another that it may induce intense terror, pain, or ecstasy in the holder. The clearest description was 12 pages before the end, where the book descended into jagged lines that were unable to be deciphered as text at all. Scribbled in the margins, it was explained this was not a key like one made to fit a conventional lock. It was simply an object destined inexorably and terribly to open the world. As you scoured the pages, trying to piece together the information, you had to be jolted out of your reverie by an archivist clearing their throat. Night had fallen, and this part of the library was to be sealed and locked. How much time had passed? Reluctantly, you put the book back in its place and returned to your chamber, where you turned the words of the book over and over in your mind, wide awake and impossibly focused. The next day you went about your tasks at a pace, not dancing and honeyed, but in a feverish rush. You finished them impeccably before the midday prayer and descended again to find the book about the key. There's a beautiful image of the archives. In a week you had memorized every legible word and most of the illegible parts too. You had checked the records extensively and found the book's origins were vague. Marked donated a few years ago by someone with a common given name and no family name. None of the archivists knew much about it or why it had been preserved and kept on the restricted shelves. There were records of 4 separate individuals who'd come seeking it, and when you wrote to track their whereabouts, you found 3 each turned up dead hundreds of miles away within a week of leaving the library. The 4th was missing. The more you read over it, the further you became convinced that the book was a plea, a desperate warning. For one thing at least was clear from the frenzied jumble of the texts. The key was a grave threat, and it was not safe where it was. The book did not speak directly of its location, but you had pored over its every word and unraveled every hint. Once there was a reference to an obscure piece of southern poetry that, from your reading, you knew spoke of a tower. Later there was a mention of a famous jewel, and from your reading you knew which royal family was associated with it, so you knew the key was in a country far to the south in the mountain kingdoms, at the top of a tower of the locked keep, where they said a monster guarded every magical artifact their royal family had been able to steal. And so one day, the Order of Archivists of the Great Library rose and went about their daily tasks to find the most dedicated and promising acolyte gone. You had resolved to make your way into the tower to find the key, and nothing could stop you. As you rocked in the carriages and barges that gradually carried you closer, you went over the words of the book in your mind. You told yourself this opening had to be avoided above everything else, above your ties with friends and family, above your own life, above even your beloved duties at the library. The idea of the key swirled and grew in your mind, reverberated into a frenetic shrill of alarm. Your heart beating loud in your ears as you fixated on it, thrilled and awestruck over what it might be, what it might do. You had to find it to hide it away somewhere safe, you reminded yourself, somewhere no one could ever use it. But the feeling had crept into you already, crawled inside you the moment you read the words for the first time. The second you noticed them out of the corner of your eye, Under the beating in your chest, the idea of the key had already coiled itself around your veins, nestled in your synapses. Somewhere inside you, you knew that above all, the key clamors to be used, to fulfill its purpose, no matter the principles of its disciples. And here we're told to turn to page 23, the Acolyte's preparations. You arrive in a cold, wet town that calls itself a city. The cities where you're from are beautiful organic structures built up around rivers and rich arable plains, or fortresses laid out on hilltops resplendent and proud. This town huddles cowering at the foot of a tall mountain range of black stone. Rickety buildings built high and streets filthy underfoot. This is the furthest south you've ever been. Part of you tries to think of this as an interesting academic study, but it is colder and wetter than anywhere you've been before, and the truth is, you don't like it. You don't speak the local language as well as you'd like, but it's enough to hold a conversation, to discuss politics and the weather with the woman who drives the mail cart, and to discover that you will find better rooms if you walk higher up through the city's winding streets, closer toward the tower. You learn about the ball and its history from people at market stalls. It's clear from the way people talk about the tower and what you see of it looming over the city that it will not be easy to get into. Waiting for the nights of the ball seems your best chance of getting inside. You find simple, clean rooms with a window that looks out on the tower. You spend 2 weeks shivering each night as you try to fall asleep, learning irregular verb conjugations from a small book you buy in the market, asking and reading about the names of local courtiers and rumors about the princess. And as you read, you often find yourself staring out at the tower, looking at it through the mist in the morning and watching the occasional light flicker in its high windows when night falls in the evening. At some point, you stop drawing the curtains. You wake on the morning of the ball with your head turned toward the window, so that when you first open your eyes, you see the tower. You take stock of your possessions, laying them neatly on the table. There's not much left. It's almost as if you planned for the journey here, but not a journey back. As you set off, you carry little with you. Add to your inventory, plus 42 crowns. I take it that is the monies of this place. So we have 42 crowns in a small drawstring purse. Simple. Turn to page 24. A storm was coming. The air is heavy with it. Clouds have drifted in over the days you make your preparations. As you approach the locked keep, the sky is now slate gray and slowly churning, rumbling softly with the threat of things to come. The sky is darkest over the keep itself. Storm clouds stretching hundreds of feet up into the air circle the tower, as if it draws them into a shroud itself in the shadows. Rather, as if it draws them in to shroud itself in the shadows. You survey the castle in front of you, considering your best point of approach. Ahead of you is the main gate, the main grand gate, where serious-looking city guards line the streets, and gleaming carriages of guests have just begun to arrive. The road here is cleaner than the rest of the city, neatly cobbled and wide enough for each polished carriage with its team of horses to approach and wait for entry to the ball. The princess's inquisitors themselves seem to be inspecting each one thoroughly. When you see a carriage finally approved, you watch it travel straight through the main stone gate, and a second set right into the inner part of the keep. Down the hill off to the left, you see a well-worn dirt track that leads you to an opening at the side of the outer walls. You can make out a smaller door where a queue of cooks and servants are waiting to be let through. City guards are checking the foot traffic before each is allowed in, and beside them, carts stacked high with goods trundle through much more quickly. Around to the right of the castle walls, the fast-flowing river that splits the city in two tumbles from the mountains above, sweeping downward before it winds more sedately through the houses. Here and there, the stones of thick outer walls of the castle seem worn and loose, where the water thunders by, rocks and branches scraping past the fast current. If there were any way to get inside while avoiding the gates, it would be here. So, finally, we have a choice. To head towards the main gate, to head towards the servants' entrance, to head toward the river. If I'm being honest, the main gate seems like a suicide mission. The river seems dangerous. For me, someone like me, I don't know. But perhaps I could get away. Presenting myself as a servant. Surely there's lots of items in this castle that a lore master accounts for, and perhaps I could pretend to be one such lore master. So, as I said, I'm going in blind, and well, my decision is to go to page 25, the servants' entrance. Right, so we've decided to go to the servants' entrance. As you approach closer, you see that the city guards in their worn uniforms look extremely tired. You wonder how much extra work the commotion of the ball must be for them. The track is in a wide open field, so anything you do will be fairly easy to see, but everyone is plainly concerned with their own business. The carts are mostly stacked high with sacks of rice and produce, crates of fruit and bolts of material. They trundle forward through the exposed field and barely stop as they approach the larger opening. There's no chance to jump aboard without finding a way to slow them down. But once at the opening, the guards seem to know the drivers, talking and waving them through with only a cursory glance at the contents of their wagons or trailers. The people on foot each seem to be carrying papers that look like work permits or letters. They form a line along the muddy grass bank leading down to a smaller gate where the papers are obviously checked carefully. Well, it seems this is my only choice, which is actually what I would have done. I suppose I would have tried to sneak, but I suppose maybe diplomacy is better. Speak to the wagon drivers, hoping for one who will let you hide among their goods. Turn to page 26. 26. You catch up alongside the line of wagons and call out to some of the drivers. If your charisma is 4 or below, well, unfortunately it is 3. Only 1 or 2 drivers slow to hear you. One young woman, readjusting sacks of flowers, seems reluctant and eventually shakes her head and moves on. A thin, haggard figure with an unreadable face beckons you closer and asks in a low voice how you'll make it worth their while. Well, if you have enough money in your inventory, you can offer them 10 crowns. I suppose that's exactly what I'll do. Pays to be rich, I suppose. I do have enough crowns, and therefore I will turn to page 27. Looks like I'm bribing the driver. The driver pauses for a moment and then gives you a sharp nod, face still impassive. They pull off to the side of the queue and bring the wagon to a halt, calling out to someone ahead that they heard a keg slip and need to rearrange. As they hop down, expressionless, they hold out a hand. You slip the coins into your hand. Remove 10 crowns from your inventory. Very well. Opening the back doors of the wagon, they usher you briskly inside, and behind a stack of crates where bottles clink, with a grunt they drag some barrels in front, so you're out of sight, and close the doors on you. The wagon rolls on, and a moment later an exhausted-looking guard opens the doors to give an offhand, perfunctory inspection that definitely does not involve moving heavy barrels. The doors close again, and the wagon trundles on, opening onto the view of a plain stone wall a few minutes later. The driver slowly unloads the barrels, then gestures for you to get up and leave with a raised eyebrow and a "come on then." You nod thanks as you step from the wagon. They're busy moving crates, face still blank and unreadable. You emerge from around the side of the wagon into the outer bailey. Turn to page 38. The outer bailey? Right, so we're at the outer bailey. Oh, good, we have a little bit of a visual of the outer bailey. So we've made it through, I suppose, the outer walls. Now we're on the inside. Perhaps we've actually made it through this door here. I suppose we'll find out. Ah yes, indeed. It is the first set of walls that we've made it through. The courtyard inside the first set of walls is all bustle. People dart in and out of the stores and barns that line the walls. Geese and pigs are driven through the pens, and archways, carts, and archways. Carts trundle by piled with cloth or fruit or seafood. Merchants bringing deliveries shout to be heard over the commotion, checking their expensive goods off a list. Small buildings line the walls that must be stables and barns, grain stores and bakehouses. The smell of the pigs in the city below is now overlaid with fresh bread and spices, onions and garlic frying in fat. It's quite nice. You seem to pass mostly unnoticed now that you're through the main walls, but you see the gate to the inner castle beyond is crowded with guards and several figures in the robes of the princess's inquisitor. Ornate metal masks covering their faces below bread-brimmed hats. Rather, broad-brimmed hats. I still have bread for brains right now. The Inquisitors swing contraptions that look like lanterns attached to long chains which glow unnervingly with a pale fire, scanning for magical objects and intruders. Though favored upper-class guests and the most powerful and well-liked in the court usually find leniency, the Inquisitors' reputation is for brutal and uncompromising punishment that no one has the power to check. It's well known that the Inquisitors answer only to the absent spellbinder princess, who rarely troubles herself to intervene. Looking hastily away from the Inquisitors at the gate, you cast around for some other way into the buildings toward the tower, and see one door in the inner wall that servants move in and out of. It looks like the only way leading into the inner parts of the castle. Your only other choice would be to approach someone for help, but looking around at the hubbub, it's hard to make out who might aid you and who'd report you. Ah, well, if your logic is 5 or above, lucky me, it's 6. I look over the figures in the courtyard, searching for small clues about their business inclinations, or their business inclinations and loyalties. Good, so that will bring me to page 48. Identifying an ally. Right. Identifying an ally. You think back on everything you've read and heard on how castles in this part of the world operate, the many small chores and works necessary to keep a large building running as efficiently as it seems to be. Even if the princess herself never appears, there must be people doing that upkeep. Fixing leaks and broken tiles on the roof after a storm, feeding goats, churning butter, bringing in hay and bringing out waste. You keep an eye out for the workers who seem familiar with the place, permanent staff or regular traders and cooks, and notice most are in good clean clothes. Better quality than many in the lower city. These people have a safe, stable, long-term income and a place to sleep at night. No amount of bribery would be worth them risking that. You try to look for more promising candidates to help you, systematically eliminating groups from consideration. Gate guards who move as if frightened of the Inquisitors. Too loud musicians and players who draw attention. Children whose loyalties and silence may be unpredictable. Anyone who seems to take enjoyment in the power they have over those in their employ and may relish turning in a suspicious figure. What you have left are a few stragglers you can't identify, and 2 caravans with the unusual cargo that marks them out as specialist merchants. No ordinary carts of food supplies move through to this part of the castle. Watching them carefully, you think both must be here to provide some peculiar curio to add interest and spectacle to the ball. Might they risk helping you if they never plan to do business here again? Driving one of the carts is a small woman in plain traveling clothes, and an ocean blue headscarf who eyes the Inquisitor's contraptions warily, with what looks like distaste. You recognize the unusual sight of a wristwatch just visible under her sleeve from its faint arcane glow, and decide she must be carrying magical goods. As well as this, standing, leaning against the other vehicle, a wooden wagon with beautifully painted sides, is a man with sharp features and a very inadequate clothes for the mountain climate. He watches the Inquisitors coolly as he waits to pass through. The open door of the wagon reveals what looks like vases and vases of glittering glass flowers. The lady doesn't seem to be too fond of the Inquisitors, and of course, if she's carrying magical goods, well, I'm quite well versed in such things, so I would rather take my chances with her. So I'll go to page 49. The magical goods dealer. The woman gives you a nod as you approach, flicking her eyes back to the Inquisitors at the inner gate as she speaks. They're going to search you too. You tell her carefully that you're not sure if they'll let you in. She cocks an eyebrow in surprise, asking only half-jokingly whether you carry a dangerous magical artifact. You explain you simply have no invitation or work permit. She lets out a long, considering hum and looks you over. She's waiting for you to continue, but doesn't seem opposed to the idea of helping you. This woman is interested in magic, so perhaps you could tell her some of the truth, that you want to get in to retrieve something magical that was taken into the tower. Furthermore, it may be too dangerous to be so explicit. Tell her you're supposed to have an invitation for the ball but have lost it. I'm not inclined to lie to this woman, if I'm being honest, so I'm going to turn to page 50. I'm going to be very blunt with her. Speak the truth. You tell her about the Spellbinder Princess's requisition room, and there's a glimmer of recognition in her eye. She agrees slowly that she's heard of it, and then she leans closer to tell you quietly that though she may live and trade here, she never thought much of places where magic was controlled only by the richest and most powerful. Thinking this is a good sign, you continue on and to tell her in your vaguest terms that there is something the princess's inquisitors have confiscated that you need. She looks back over at you in the waiting inquisitors as if considering. My assistant was ill, couldn't make it, she tells you. So there are 2 admission passes on my paperwork. If someone were to sit in the seat at the back of the cart without my knowledge, I expect they may be able to pass through the gates. She gives you another nod and turns away from you, beginning to inch the horse forward toward the Inquisitors, who have finally let through the last group they were searching. She's moving slowly enough that you can easily get a hold of the handrail and pull yourself up on a raised seat, probably designed for a servant or child, that faces backward off the back of the cart. You try to sit and stay calm, hearing your own breathing as the cart pulls up to the gate. The Inquisitors take a long time examining her goods, swinging lanterns filled with pale blue fire that illuminates the shadows between boxes and seems to shimmer with the light touch of spellbound objects. One Inquisitor sweeps a lantern over you, but moves on quickly when nothing seems to light up. You let your breath hiss out as they move away. After a lot of moving boxes around, the cart is given leave to move through the gate. It swings left and pulls to a halt beside a wall. And without looking back at you, the driver goes to speak to an official-looking man with a list, talking about timings and unloading. You're able to drop down from the seat unnoticed and look around at the inner bailey. Turn to page 54. The Inner Bailey. You are standing in a small courtyard at the heart of the surrounding castle, beyond the tall, thick walls that close off this area to commoners, the Inner Bailey. This is the oldest and grandest part of the castle, huge and ancient and weather-worn. Servants, workers, and cooks in fine uniforms move efficiently around, and figures in extravagant gowns and robes step from their carriages to be led into the guest rooms. Ah, here we are. Finally, we have sight of the tower proper. This sentence was cut off. All in the shadow of the great locked keep that looms up ahead of you, dominating the courtyard. Lights flicker in the high windows of the keep, and above, the whirl of dark clouds that encircle the great tower rumble ominously. It's quieter here. None of the shouts of guards or squeals of animals in the outer courtyard city below. You hear only the faint sounds of music and murmur of voices. You remember that this must be the busiest day this courtyard has seen in some time. You can only imagine the deathly silence that accompanies the spellbinder princess's usual isolation. Now that you've made it to the inner part of the castle, everyone here hurries around efficiently and quietly attending to their tasks. You don't seem to be attracting much suspicion, and the guards are fewer and more polite, dressed in uniforms that look more elaborate and ceremonial. You see an inquisitor, masked and wrapped in their robe of office, standing near the main stairway where the guests disappear up into the keep. They seem to be slowly sweeping a lantern of blue flame over each, looking for magical objects, but not searching them otherwise or checking invitations. They must have already been searched more thoroughly at an earlier gate. Seems I have two choices. I can blend in and follow the guests up the stairs into the corridors of the keep, or sneak around aside to find a quieter entrance. Nobody really seems to be quite suspicious, and so if I were to sneak around, I believe I would be perhaps attracting unwanted attention. So rather, I'm going to blend in and follow the guests up the stairs into the corridors of the keep. I will turn to page 67. Let's switch up the ambiance just a touch. There we go. You find yourself in a winding corridor and fall into step behind a group of guests who seem to be heading deeper into the keep. Everyone seems too busy to pay much attention to you, hurrying past with plates of food and carrying trunks and luggage full of fresh clothes for guests to change into. A few of the guests you're following seem as if they've been drinking already, shrieking with laughter as they totter forward in elaborate costumes. They draw the full, exasperated attention of the few servants or personal guards you do come across. Now that you're inside, it's assumed you have reason for being there, and you seem to fade into the background or fall beneath the notice of the busy attendants in comparison to the demanding visitors. Around the corner, the guests peel unsteadily away into private rooms where they seem to be preparing their hair or stowing coats. So you continue onward, trying to look as if you know where you're going. You wander through the corridors of the keep, occasionally having to double back when you hit a dead end. Hearing the sound of music at a junction, you follow it and notice an open door leading into an entrance chamber full of cloaks and hats. It seems to lead to the ball, and then the direction of the base of the tower. If you're not wearing a guard's uniform, or to change out of it in the dressing room, turn to page 101. If I'm wearing a guard's uniform, well, I'm not wearing a guard's uniform. So, simply turn to page 101. You're standing in a small chamber full of coats and hats. At the end of the room on your left, you see a door that leads into the ball itself. On the other side of the doorway, guests mill around, almost all wearing masks. Most must have greatcoats left in carriages or rooms to stay overnight, as the dressing room is mostly unused. Casting around, you see a couple of cloaks, and in the corner, a small table with a few masks placed on top. If you want, you can choose to take a green velvet cloak, fine clothes with embroidery and golden thread. It covers enough of you that no matter what you are wearing underneath, you seem to be wearing fine clothes. Looking at the masks, well, I will take this, quite simply. This will be part of my inventory. A green cloak of fine clothes with embroidery in golden thread. Suppose I'll put perhaps dashes here, and I'll put dashes here. A little bit awkward, but I suppose that works out. I can put the... yeah, let's put it like that. As well as this, looking at the masks, you find several that seem like they'll fit. You can also choose to take one and add it to your inventory, or else continue into the ball unmasked. A plain white mask, round and smooth, that looks almost like the face of a white porcelain doll. You think it looks like it will attract very little attention, but something about it is unsettling. The round hollows of its eyes seeming to stare back at you. Well, I've spent enough time in a library to know that if something does feel unsettling, perhaps I don't want to be tangling with it. So I'll hold off for now. Ah, there's more. A copper mask, which looks like lace, but when you look closer, you see it's made of lightweight metal, thin wires woven into perfect shape. An ornate fox mask that covers your whole face, with golden filigree that swirls around the eyes and curls up into golden ears. A bird mask with a long beak painted in dark, elegant colors. Let's see. An ornate fox mask that covers your whole face. Perhaps this... well, I could go for dark, which will go nice with the green velvet, but perhaps the ornate fox mask might look better. I don't know. I think this is quite stylish. We'll go with this then. Good. This is interesting, though. Something about it is unsettling. Anyways, moving on. Gathering yourself, you turn to your left, and the only way toward the tower. Out into the ball. Turn to page 102. You emerge into a space so large and crowded that it's difficult to get your bearings. You seem to be in a very long room, packed with a mass of people, laughing and chattering in many colored robes, capes and dresses. Candles suspended. Perfect timing for the candles, isn't it? Candles suspended in delicate lanterns meander slowly over the tops of feathered hats and elaborate hairpieces, the reflected light glimmering off thousands of tiny tiles set into mosaics in the ceilings. You can hear the beat of rippling music coming from a door off to your left, through which more people seem to be lining up to dance. Formally dressed servants weave through the crowd with drinks and plates of curious food designed to amuse the guests. Fizzing canapes topped with sweets that look like jewels, or orbited by shadows of illusory butterflies. If you're wearing the plain white mask, turn straight to page 111. But we're not, though. We're wearing the ornate fox mask, So, no page 111. If you're not wearing a mask and you're the libertine, turn to 104. Oh, that's interesting. Well, I am wearing a mask, and okay, well, there's quite a bit of branching going off here. It's interesting. Otherwise, glancing around, you see a glimpse of a doorway at the other end of the long hall leading toward the base of the tower. The crowd is so thick that you'd have to push through to get there. Most likely it'd be easy to blend in if you joined in conversations as you worked your way toward the door. The room is busy, and the guests are varied enough that even if you're wearing the plain clothes of a servant or worker, you could perhaps go unnoticed if you seem to be part of the party. The only other door you can see leads into a room where people are dancing. Besides this door is the only person you see standing alone, a woman who's facing in your direction with a wide smile on her face. Interesting. Try to blend in and speak to people? Might be difficult. I'm not exactly the social type, I wouldn't think. Try to push through the crowd to the door. Well, that might be tough. The smiling woman, though, she interests me. I think I'm going to approach the smiling woman. Off to page 112 then, are we? By every standard of age, well, rather, by every standard of this age, this woman is beautiful. There is a gleam in her eye that you cannot place. Is it that she's an intruder too? Does she recognize you? Or does she simply like the look of you? I've been waiting for someone to ask me to dance, she says sweetly. She's so beautiful, you wonder why nobody is talking to her, and the dancing is just about to begin. You find yourself already speaking, asking her to dance. In the room with the music, she moves carefully and elegantly, her feet exactly where they should be, her dress fanning out as she spins. Your eyes are on the teeth of her lovely smile. Moving close into a stance where her hand rests at your hip, she guides you through the steps. As the dance ends, she leans towards you. In a low voice, she asks to speak with you privately, nodding toward a small door that heads off to the main room. She is still smiling, placid. This may not be the way up toward the tower, but you have a strong feeling that it would be good to talk to her. And don't you need all the help you can get? As you follow her into the side chamber, her shadow seems to ripple strangely, stretching and pulling as if growing and distorting out of the corner of your eye. Are you all right? She asks, gentle and warm, and you assure her you are. When you glance back at her long shadow flickering in the candlelight on the very far wall, nothing seems amiss. I don't know that I've seen you before out in society, she says sweetly. I wonder what you're still doing at the ball. You're not sure what she means by this, but think it would be best to keep quiet. Her smile stretches wider at your lack of reply. I can give you a gift, she says, stepping closer. You find yourself unable to move or look away. Whatever it is you want here, this gift can help you. You feel the warmth of her as she leans into your arms and watch her eyelashes flutter closed. She seems perfectly human and lovely. She draws closer as if to kiss you. This woman has been nothing but kind, you think, and even if something were wrong, playing along could be to your benefit. Hold on. In the book, there was a picture of the woman. I was just hoping to share that. Ah, well, that's a shame. It's, Ah, yes, there it is. Good, good, good. This is the smiling woman. The formatting of the PDF version and the actual book are just a little bit different. Okay. So I can try to step away, politely excuse myself, let her kiss me. If my logic is 3 or below, and I have a weapon, well, neither of those things, I don't feel very... I do not feel very comfortable about this, if I'm being honest. I mean, she is quite beautiful, but... it's a little bit forward, either way. I'm going to step away. Turn to page 113. The woman seems confused and a little crestfallen as you pull away. You think perhaps she's not used to anyone turning her down. She looks down at the floor shyly. You wonder if what you saw of her shadow, what you thought you saw of her shadow, was the magic of the tower affecting the room itself. There's so much magic here, it makes sense if things like shadows could be affected. Besides, perhaps she would be a valuable ally if the shadows turn on you. There's so much magic here, it would make sense if things like shadows could be affected. Besides, perhaps she would be a valuable ally if the shadows turn on you. Still, it's suspicious behavior nonetheless. Oh, she breathes quietly. I thought... I'm sorry if I was mistaken. She still hovers close to you, her cheeks a little flushed, her eyes bright and interested, locked on yours. If you do like me, I promise I can give you a gift that will help you, if you just trust me. Her eyes are very bright, her interest in you unwavering. She seems unwilling to elaborate on the gift without some confirmation of your affection. Make your excuses and leave the room, returning to move through the crowd, or let her kiss me. Oh, bloody hell. Why the hell is it bold, as if to... It wants me to do this, you know? I'll be honest, I'm tempted to actually give in and let her kiss me. I'm at least somewhat convinced that her shyness was genuine. Oh boy. Decisions. When has something like this ever worked out? For those of us who have been in something similar, has it ever really worked out in our favor? Maybe in the moment, but it always eventually leads to disappointment, doesn't it? Still, a gift. Alright. I'm going to let the woman kiss me. 1:15. Right. A kiss from the gifted one. With a sweet, calm smile, her face unfurls. Wet, alien protrusions line rows of teeth sunk into pulsing gums and sinews, an architecture of fleshy fractals that seem to spiral down into her throat. All you can think now is how beautiful she is inside. The creature kisses you, mandibles crawling over your cheeks to sink your face into the churning mouth. You sigh into the darkness as the thing twists your organs into its shape. What in the fuck? Oh my goodness. Oh. Shit. Oh my goodness. That is absolutely horrifying. Surely this is the end. Bloody hell. That description. Bloody hell. I should have bloody went back and left. Well, kiss from the gifted one. The creature kisses you, mandibles crawling over your cheeks to sink your face into the churning mouth. You sigh into the darkness as the thing twists your organs to its shape. That's absolutely disgusting. Huh? When you emerge from the room, you feel warm and contented, as if waking from a good dream. There is a beautiful woman on your arm looking contentedly back at you, face split with a wide smile. None of the guests in the room give you a second glance. They cannot see the way she has changed you. And you find it difficult to remember what's different anyway. When you try to think about it, the things you remember are a dance and a beautiful darkness. You resolve to contend toward the top of the tower, and the woman is still smiling as she leads you to a place where you can easily continue upwards and bids you farewell. But although your reflection is the same, something now slumbers within you. A gift. Gain the status Bearer of Gifts. I won't lie, I thought that was game over. Your strength and agility both increase by 2. Holy moly. Beautiful. Turn to page 146. It's like something under Baldur's Gate, you know? Something absolutely terrifying, but such strength and beauty. And it may have been one of the most terrifying things that's happened to me in a game before, and yet I'm still alive, so... You emerge into a wide staircase that eventually turns to slowly spiral upward. You realize with excitement that you must have made it into the base of the tower. You begin to climb. Eventually you pass a window that shows the evening outside. The lights of the lower city twinkle far below, and you can make out the faint sounds of music from the ball in the keep. Rain has begun to fall, and the dark clouds still cluster above. Something to turn slowly around the higher reaches of the tower. Seeming to turn, sorry. Rain has begun to fall, and the dark clouds still cluster above, seeming to turn slowly around the higher reaches of the tower. You continue to climb and climb. You see no further windows, but continue on for so long that you're sure you should be getting close to the top, and must be up in the clouds by now. Time seems to extend as you hear nothing but the sound of your footfalls on the worn stone. Once you think you recognize a cobweb and wonder if you could be magically made up to climb the same 100 stairs over and over, making no more progress. I apologize. I'm going to read that over again. Once you recognize a cobweb and wonder if you could be magically made to climb the same 100 stairs over and over, making no more progress, the spellbinder princess may well have employed all kinds of strange magic to prevent unwanted guests reaching her sanctum in the upper part of the tower. Eventually, though, the featureless repetition seems to break. Turn to page 147. A series of doors. As you climb the stairs, you come across 3 doors. The first is set into the central pillar that the staircase seems to wind around. The door is made of an expensive dark wood, and the doorway is carved stone. Carved stone around it. If you try the door in the carved archway, turn to page 148. Not long after, you find another. The second door is also in the central pillar, a little higher up, as if the room 1 floor above. When you press your ear to the door, you think you can hear heavy, ragged breathing inside, as if of a person in panic. Looking at the door itself, you see that unlike the room below, it has been locked from this side. The key still in the large iron lock. I can turn the key and enter the locked room. You notice the last door, to your surprise, on the other side of the stairs. At first, you think the door must be open into empty space off the side of the tower, but peering under the gap at the bottom, you see the stone continue on the other side. It must lead to some extra room built on the side of the tower. though you're sure you don't remember any such room being visible from the outside. A little past this door, the solid stone underfoot seems to become softer in the center of each step, until you feel as if you're walking on cushions. When you slow down, your feet start to sink down as if into wet sand or a peat bog. To remain still and let yourself sink down into the stone, turn to page 161. Or I can ignore the doors, walking along the very edge of the stairway where the stone is most solid to continue upward. Oh boy. I'm very skeptical about the third door, that it's a trap. I'm somewhat skeptical of the panting. Honestly, that's terrifying. I think I might try the first door. The door in the carved archway. The door is made of an expensive dark wood, and the doorway is carved stone around it. 148. The door swings open to reveal what looks like a child's bedroom. There are books and papers at a small desk. Dolls lie neatly up above a dollhouse. Pillows with frills and lace cover a four-poster bed with soft, heavy curtains that are carefully tied back. All the sheets look faded, as if washed countless times. Oh dear. Beside the bed, a figure is folding a sheet carefully, then shaking it out to begin folding again, over and over. It looks like a woman with thin hands, a covered head, and a long plain skirts. The material of her undershirt is fresh and starched, but looks to have a large faded stain splattered across it that might have once been blood, as if soap couldn't quite scrub it clean. When the figure turns to one side, you notice with a jolt that some of her face is missing, torn horribly so that the skull is visible. The muscles and tendons are exposed all down her neck, and the ripped, exposed flesh seems to continue below the stained shirt collar. The wounds look new and fresh, and too vicious for anybody to survive. The woman, or ghost, or whatever it is, looks suspended in time at the moment of violent death. She moves to dust the spotless toys lined up along the shelves, repeating the motions over and over, making no difference or impression whatsoever. You stand and watch for a while as the spirit moves to scrub at a small, bloody handprint on one of the painted cabinets. This stain, too, is faded. Now you're looking at it. All the paint on the furniture looks thin, as if worn away by cleaning over the years. She continues about her futile business, seeming not to notice you. If I have a weapon, I could attack her. Of course I don't. I think I'm going to speak to the spirit. If you have the state as bearer of gifts, indeed I do, or on maker. You try to greet the spirit and ask what she's doing. The ruined face turns up towards you, and in the places where the muscles still move, it seems to contort in horror. She will not speak to you, shaking her head slowly every time you try to speak, backing away frantically if you try to approach. After a while, you give up. All you can do is leave, return to the corridor, turn straight to page 147. Back to the doors. Alright, well, we've tried the first door. 2 doors sinking into the floor. What about this third door, the one I was suspicious of? First, you think the door must open into empty space off to the side of the tower, but peering under the gap at the bottom, you see the stone continue on the other side. It must lead to some extra room built on the side of the tower. I don't remember any such room being visible from the outside, which is why I'm a bit skeptical, but at this point I'm really starting to question reality. Let's go to page 153. I may be regretting this. As you reach out to touch the door handle, every hair on your body seems to stand on end. You feel suddenly as if you shouldn't enter, but you're already turning the handle, and there's a click as the door opens a crack. If you're the sailor, I'm not. Otherwise... The door swings open in front of you to reveal a small circular stone room. On the opposite side is another identical door, with two sets of velvet drapes on either side. One of the drapes is half open, a large mirror visible beneath. You can't help staring at what you see in the mirror. At first you think it must be reflecting another mirror somehow, but the room is otherwise empty. Inside the frame, the reflection is a migraine tessellation of shapes, mirrors upon mirrors stretching into impossibility, and as you stare at it, what you see is everything. Oh. Gain the status all-seeing. It's unfortunate. All-seeing, and I have to subtract 1 from both my logic and charisma. That's unfortunate. It's my strong suit. All of a sudden, you are finding it difficult to retain your grip on reality. Before you, hints of all possible futures and pasts shimmer at the edges of your vision. In your ears, all of the music of every ball that has or could ever be held here expands outwards, and you know every note and syncopation. You reach out to steady yourself on the doorframe, and your fingers brush other worlds before the surfaces under your hands resolve into your current surroundings. You close the door and go back to the staircase, or walk toward the mirror and the far door. I'm fascinated. I think I'll walk towards the mirror and the far door. I mean, think of the knowledge that lays beyond the lore. It's intoxicating, is it not? So, I'll turn to page 156. Walk toward the mirror. Right, walking toward the mirror. You step toward the mirror. You think you hear the door close behind you, with an ominous click, but it's hard to know whether what happened here and now, or before, or elsewhere. With each step, the dizzying vortex in the mirror slides into a set of new angles, but nothing further happens. The mirror stands inert. When you stand still, so do the shapes within it. Ooh, that's quite a fascinating mirror. Wow, It's rather mind-boggling, is it, the way it twists in on itself? Oh no. All of the possibilities you see shimmering outside your visual range involve you going through the far door, the one that seems to lead further out into the air, away from the main tower. You open the door at the far end and find an identical room. You try to return the stairway back through the first door and find yourself in an identical room. You're trapped in looping space. You draw back the other set of drapes and see only whiteness in the window beyond, rather than the storm outside of the keep. When you listen closely, you hear absolutely nothing. When you scream and shout, there is no answer, no echo, only a muffled silence. There is no way out. Your journey ends.